So if the Electoral College doesn't seem confusing enough, now I'm going to add one more element to it to make it even more confusing. So as I said earlier, that in order to become president, a presidential candidate needs to get at least 270 electoral votes. That's the magic number that that puts you over the top as a presidential candidate. But what happens if no candidate wins a majority of electoral votes? Like, what if it's a tie, 269 to 269? Or what if there's a third party candidate, somebody who's running as a different party, and they get enough votes that prevents the two major party candidates, the Democrats or the Republicans, from getting a majority? What happens then? The process is strange, and the potential for problems is there. So this video will explain it in some detail. Actually, there is no video. The reason being that I had embedded a video here that was kind of funny, and it just kind of explained what happens if there's a tie in the Electoral College, and sort of talked about some interesting historical events. It was like a 2-minute video in this extremely long video, relatively speaking, and it got pulled down by YouTube for copyright infringements. Now, in fairness, it was a copyright infringement. I just didn't think they would care because I wasn't monetizing the video. I wasn't using it to make money. I was using it for educational purposes, but they were correct. So there is no video. None of the information on the video was going to be included on the essays, so it doesn't really matter. But I felt like I should make a public apology to the powers that be, whoever cares about this, that I've removed the video. I'm going to upload it to, I've uploaded it to YouTube because you're watching it, obviously. And then I'm just going to continue on with my lecture. So for those of you who had to deal with the fact that it got taken down temporarily, which is going to be a really small number of people, sorry for the inconvenience, okay? Take care. Well, I hope that cleared up everything for you. It is really strange, our process, but I don't really have much more to add other than changing it would be really difficult. It would involve amending the Constitution. I'm not sure how easily you could get 2/3 of the House and Senate and then 3/4 of the legislature to agree to change it. And so unless there's an overwhelming support for making a change in the system, the odds are we're going to wind up having this process for quite some time. Next, I want to move on to the process by which the Constitution lays out the process by which a president can be removed from office. Now, this is like a pet peeve of mine. I have a few pet peeves. This is one of them. Because when people talk about presidents being impeached, they frequently use impeachment and removal as if they're the same thing. But the reality is that presidents get impeached and they're not removed from office. Donald Trump was impeached while he was in office. He wasn't removed from office. Bill Clinton was impeached. He was not removed from office. This happens. So it's important to understand that removing a president is a 2-step process. This also applies to federal judges, by the way, but we're just going to focus on the presidency. When a president has been impeached, all that means is that the House of Representatives, which is the body responsible for impeaching somebody, that all it means is that the House has determined that there is a sufficient amount of evidence to hold a trial. That's all it means. It's, for those of you who are familiar with the law, it's like being indicted. It means that the courts have determined there's enough evidence that they can move forward with a trial, as opposed to it just being thrown out. That's all an impeachment means. And so what happens is the House gets together first in a committee, and they draw up what are called articles of impeachment, whereby which they explain why they think what the president has done that's worthy of being removed from office. Once the articles of impeachment pass the committee, they go to the floor where everybody votes. And if a majority of the House, a simple majority, one more, votes yes than no, the president is impeached. Now, in some countries, when a president is impeached, for example, in Brazil, if a president is impeached, they are temporarily removed from office until the trial takes place. And then if they're found innocent, they resume their presidency. If they're found guilty, obviously they don't. But in the United States, the way the Constitution lays out, if somebody is accused of a crime, they're innocent until proven guilty, and that applies to the president as well in the case of impeachment. And so when a president has been impeached, it simply means that the House has determined by a simple majority, 50% plus one, that there's a sufficient amount of evidence to hold a trial. If the president is impeached, then what happens is the trial takes place in the Senate. The Senate is where the trial takes place. And so what will happen is the members of the House who voted to remove the president from office or voted to impeach the president, they will go to the Senate and they will lay out the evidence for why they think the president should be removed from office. Then, after they've presented the evidence, the president will get to send people to explain why the president doesn't believe that the president should be removed from office. Just like a court of law, the House of Representatives, they function like the prosecutors. The president's lawyers function like the defense. The Senate, they basically act like jurors. They sit and listen to the evidence. They don't get to ask anybody questions, although in the last trial, what happened when President Trump was impeached, they were allowed to submit questions to the presiding officer, the Chief Justice, and if the Chief Justice approved of the question, then he would ask either to defend the members of the House or the members of the Senate to answer this question. But there were no follow-up questions, so if they just evaded the question, there was nothing that could be done. Ultimately, after all the evidence has been presented, the Senate votes. In order to remove a president from office requires a 2/3 majority, or what we call a supermajority sometimes. 2/3 of the Senate have to vote in favor of removing a president from office for him to be removed. When Bill Clinton was impeached, there was no way he was being removed from office. There weren't enough Democrats who were going to vote to remove him. Everybody knew that before the trial began. When President Trump was impeached, it was the same thing. Everybody knew that he was not going to be found guilty. There were just not enough Republicans who were going to vote to remove him from office. So the bar to impeach somebody is pretty low. You just need a simple majority. The bar to remove somebody is very high. You have to get 2/3 of the House and the Senate. 2/3 of the Senate to vote to remove somebody. Now, during this trial in the Senate, the presiding officer is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the head of the Supreme Court. Now, by the way, you'll see a little asterisk next to that comment where it says Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. That's because in President Trump's second impeachment trial, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court did not preside over the trial. Somebody called the Senate Pro Tem, the longest serving member of the Senate, sat in as the presiding officer. But here's the thing you need to know about all this. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who typically presides, he presides over the hearing, but he does not vote on removal. He has no say. It's like sort of a jury trial where the jury votes whether to convict somebody or not. The judge doesn't. The presiding officer, their sole function there is to ensure that the rules are followed. Okay, so impeachment is a two-step process. It starts in the House. All that
Um, if a president is impeached, it simply means that the House of Representatives has determined there's a sufficient evidence to hold a trial. All that it requires is a simple majority. One more person has to vote in favor of impeachment than against impeachment. If a president is impeached, the trial takes place in the Senate. Members of the House come to the Senate and they present the evidence for why they think the president should be removed from office. They basically function like prosecuting attorneys. The president gets to send representatives to explain why the president doesn't believe that they should be removed from office. They're kind of functioning like a defense attorney. After all the evidence has been presented, then the Senate votes. It requires a 2/3 majority, 67 senators, to remove a president from office. That has not happened in our history. It would have happened one time when Richard Nixon was president. There was, generally speaking, he had strong Republican supporters. Richard Nixon was a Republican, strong Republican supporters who were not inclined to vote to remove from office. But as a result of some evidence that came out, part of what are called the Watergate tapes, once they heard the Watergate tapes, where the president basically said he was willing to do things that were blatantly illegal, Senate Republicans came to Richard Nixon and they said to him, you can either be the first president to resign from office or you can be the first president to be removed from office. The choice is yours, because they found what he said so problematic. And therefore, Richard Nixon wasn't impeached and removed because he took the right path, I believe, and he resigned instead. The last section that I'm going to be talking about is going to be Article 3, the judicial branch, and then we're going to get into a discussion of the 3/5 compromise and slavery.